today's speakers of this session. Let me welcome Mr. Rajiv Nath, who is a Managing Director, Hindustan Syringes and Medical Devices Private Limited, and President of All India Syringes and Needles Manufacturing Association, founder and forum coordinator, Association of Indian Medical Device Industry, IMED, with over 350 members nationwide, whereby medical device manufacturers, all types of technologies have been attracted nationwide on one platform. And he'll be talking on regulations in medical devices, industry's export readiness. And the next speaker will be Mr. Mahadevan, who is a Senior General Manager and Product Head of Medical DQS India. And he will be talking on global medical device regulations overview. He comes with a 20 plus years of experience in medical device industry and with notified bodies and regulatory affairs, business unit head for medical devices certification program at DQS India, qualified lead auditor for ISO 13485, EU MDD, MDR, MDSAP under DQS MED, with overall audit experience of around 600 days of auditing in India and abroad. And he is a qualified technical file assessor for active medical devices. And I'm happy to introduce Mr. MG Satyendra of QMart Global and also our member of CCC. And he's a consultant who is playing a leading role in guiding the industry to meet importing countries' regulations. And he'll be talking on that subject. He is a Bachelor of Engineering, Electronics and Communication Engineering. 2008 onwards, he is an independent consultant. And he has been educating manufacturers on global compliance to Indian and international standards and imparting training on ISO IEC 17025, 17020, ISO 9001, ISO 13485, and 8007934 for new and existing labs. And he is a technical expert assisting in pre-compliance of CE projects or other global conformities and training for third-party inspections as per 17020. And also a technical assessor for MDQMS for NABCB, trainer faculty for FICI for 17025 and 13485. And now I welcome Mr. Rajiv Nath to give his keynote address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ramkumar, for the warm welcome and the nice introduction. I also thank the organizers for making this initiative for this seminar. Medical devices has definitely been the focus area this year. And we've seen that many new manufacturers have joined this community this year. From the automotive sector, car makers, component of automobiles, as well as garment manufacturers, textile companies, non-woven fabric manufacturers, even manufacturers who are in the food business or in the hospitality business or in the transportation business were finding their prospects to be bleak, and they are shifted or diversified into making medical devices. Whether they could be short-term opportunities to make sanitizers or to make PPE, but definitely there was a host of people rushing in to make this kind of products. So that has been the good news, but with that good news also came problems. Problems that have come have basically been that the learning curve has been very, very short. In the timelines normally available to manufacturers, the machines have been supplied by overseas suppliers from China, from Taiwan, from Korea, from Italy, from Japan, and normally these would be installed and commissioned by foreign engineers. A proper IQ, OQ, and a PQ will take place, installation, qualification, and process validation will take place before handing over the plant to the Indian buyer. But in this case, most of the equipment has been installed and commissioned at the own initiative by Indian engineers of these entrepreneurs, which is definitely very commendable. But because they are not the experts, I cannot say that in every case they could proudly state that they have achieved a very strict IQ, OQ, or PQ in the relevant manner, as would be desired by a regulatory body or its quality auditor for that matter. So on that part, with the help of Ramaji, in April and May, we had started this online education series to educate and train people online on ISO 13485 and ICMET 13485 quality management system standards. So they would at least know what the quality management system is all about if they have to be working in the area of medical devices. You can't be playing with people's health. It is even a simple product like, I would say, a tongue depressor can be harmful to a patient if it is not clean, if it is not made with the right technology and packed and handled appropriately. The first lesson for all manufacturers in medical devices has to be do no harm. And IMED as an association encourages responsible manufacturing. So of course, we have been providing and aiding platforms by which manufacturers, whether they are IMED members or not, they should definitely arm themselves with the required capacity and knowledge to make medical devices if they have to serve the Indian nation, and should they be having ambitions to sell internationally. So within IMED, we found that before COVID, there were hardly 20 manufacturers. Currently, as in August, there are 140 manufacturers listed with IMED to make PPE coveralls. So out of the 20 manufacturers earlier on, hardly 5 of them had CE marking, and maybe 7 had ISO 13485. Out of the 140 ones we have now, I do not know how many would be having genuine, credible ISO 13485 certification or genuine, credible CE certification or US FDA certification. Many of the manufacturers are being misled by consultants and taking shortcuts to buy fake certificates or unauthentic certificates from dubious resources. And this is not only harming them and their brand credibility, because you cannot hide the truth. Sooner or later, people will find out the quality is not matching to the expectations. It also harms brand India. So all those people who have been seeking membership with IMED, we've not stopped the membership, but we've been requesting all of you that if you are in this business, you must go for credible certification. When I say credible, that means a certification must come from a certification body that has got accreditation by a nationally accredited certification body like NABCB in India, or internationally like UKS in UK, which has got affiliation to the IAF, International Accreditation Forum for certification bodies. Similarly, for gloves, before we had 20 manufacturers, now we've got 27 listed with us. In the case of ventilators, there were 8 manufacturers and 17 are listed with us. While most of these are diversified from existing medical electronic companies who already had CE marking, a few of them are still new to the game, who are from the automotive side. In the case of sanitizers, from 35 companies, we've got 49 listed with us now. This is supposed to be under the Drugs Act, but we do know that the CDSCO and DCGI, under the crisis available in March, had been quite flexible in issuing licenses without being usually stringent as they normally are. So even though it is under regulations, how many of the manufacturers are actually meeting the regulations is still a question mark. Goggle manufacturers were the earlier ones, the 3-4 companies who were already existing prior to COVID, were making the product in compliance to the European CE marking or directive for PPE. That's a different directive than for medical devices. Any product that is used for a medical application, whether in India or abroad, has to be complying to the medical device directive for Europe for getting CE marking, or the medical device rules under the Drugs Act for India. Similarly, for surgical masks, before there were 25, now 71 listed with us. But I understand from the Mask Manufacturer Association that there are possibly more than 300 manufacturers currently in the country. Swab manufacturers, before they were making possibly earbuds, and now they make swabs for testing for COVID. And here the story is the same, because they are new to the medical line. They may be making hygienic products, but medical devices are more critical than making hygienic products. Diagnostic PCR kits. We had lots of manufacturers in India to make IVD reagents and kits. But for COVID specifically, they were nil, and currently we've got 8 manufacturers. And similarly for the rapid diagnostic test kits, we got now 4 manufacturers. And for N95 masks, we got now listed with IMED about 40 manufacturers. And from the Mask Manufacturer Association, I believe there are over 100 manufacturers. Also for the VTM tubes that is used for transporting the swabs for testing, there are currently over 10 manufacturers in the country. Now, for all of these companies, because of the sudden rush, we've seen a very crazy position that from acute shortages of these products in March and April, we've got surplus capacity available in the country from June onwards. In fact, from August, September, there's pretty much a glut in the country. I am flooded with WhatsApp messages on a daily basis, one-to-one to me, and also on the WhatsApp group that we host, whether for masks or for PPE coveralls, where genuine manufacturers who are seeking to make quality products, comply with all quality requirements, and trying to buy raw materials of the right specification, they are completely dismayed that they have to now compete. And they share with me pricing available on GEM portal, where they've lost to bids of other manufacturers who are giving prices below their raw material cost and forget the manufacturing cost. I'm talking about the raw material cost. Manufacturing cost consists of other costs other than raw material costs. And they're really wondering that how such kind of pricing is going to be sustainable for the manufacturers who have bid for that tender, who are trying to clear their inventory and just to create a cash flow. But such kind of drastic steps to create a cash flow to clear the inventory is being harmful to the industry as a whole. So from being industrialists and entrepreneurs, they voice their concerns to me and tell me that they want to be compared to farmers and to have an MSP, a minimum selling price to farmers, is there by the government now under the Farmers Bill passed by the Parliament a couple of days back. And they seek something similar for their medical devices, for which they have toiled to put an engineering setup in India. When we go to the international market, even the international market has changed in the last 6 months. From acute shortages in April and May, the manufacturers in various countries have ramped up capacity, whether in USA or in Germany or in Italy or in Taiwan or in Thailand or in China. And in most areas, there is no more a shortage like it was earlier. The demand supply is now getting normalized to a normal replenishment cycle, and in most cases with trusted suppliers. So people are not really hunting as hard as they were earlier for new suppliers. But yes, there are some people who would not like to put all the eggs in one basket or the Chinese basket, and they're looking at India. But when they look at India, they want to look at companies in India who can be credible and quality sources. So I keep on getting emails from embassies and from foreign buyers asking for listing of manufacturers, which I do share with them. But then out of caution, I share with them 2 lists. I will share them a list of all ventilator manufacturers, 18. And then I will share with them another list of ventilator manufacturers, which will be a shorter list of hardly 4 manufacturers having a CE mark. So there'll be 4 columns in that report. Which manufacturers have got an ISO 13485? Which ones have got a credible CE mark? Which have got an Indian certification for medical devices or ICMET certification from QCI? So that the foreign buyers would know who are really credibly certified. Now, we cannot be seen from IMET to be promoting manufacturers armed with fake certification. Not only will that destroy brand India, it will also destroy brand IMET. So this is something which has got great concerns for us in IMET. And I request all of you sincerely, there cannot be any shortcuts in this method. One has to strive hard to earn the certification. One cannot buy this kind of certification. So please do the journey sincerely. And once you will get the fruits of your labor, you will find that the quality is really improving, the cost really decreasing, getting streamlined, and you are spending less time on day-to-day basis in your business addressing manufacturing headaches because you can delegate more easily. So I'm glad about today's conference that you're organizing today to take this process again forward once again in terms of readiness. So the honest position is that India is not really ready for exports. Even the government knew that, and to be cautious, they had put in a lot of export restrictions in the beginning by putting in quotas and asking the BIS certification as a means for DGFT to give the approvals. But that was not being sufficient to let go of the capacities available in the country. And the manufacturers requested the government and also me that kindly allow the manufacturers to allow the exports at least to those countries who don't have strong regulations. Now, that may look like an easy way out, that USA and Europe or Japan or Australia or Thailand or Singapore can protect themselves by having strong regulatory curbs. So they, even if the certification is not available with Indian manufacturers, they know what they're looking for and they can filter out the good and the bad. But that does not mean that we can export just for the sake of exporting and access to markets in Africa, in Kenya, Tanzania, Tashkent, CIS countries, products which are of shoddy quality. Once you lose the market, they will not come back to you. So whether it is for your own business to have continuity of sales or for the people in the industry, it is important that one has to achieve quality, and quality means higher than the bare minimum regulatory requirements. I would request all of you to keep on learning, keep on improving, and keep on striving for proper certification. Ramaji, it will be very nice and interesting feedback. Out of the 130 plus companies you had got trained online, if you could reach out to them and let us have a graphical review as to how many of them have progressed on this journey of certification. How many expect to get certified in a month's time or in a quarter's time, and how many are already certified after having got trained on that, and how many are not seeking certification. I think such kind of barometer we need for ourselves to see the effectiveness of what we are trying to achieve in trying to motivate manufacturers to work in a responsible manner. Thank you very much. And any of you can feel free to email to us at IMET and reach out for your queries. The Government of India has got a help desk at the regulators' premises, the CDSCO. IMET itself hosts ODEMET for user developers. Also, we have a forum for regulatory review and for regulatory knowledge. And also, other issues are discussed like specification standards, whether the BIS standards or ICMET standards. On our part, we have been requesting Quality Council of India to come out with the ICMET Plus certification scheme at the earliest, so that the high quality conscious manufacturers can strive to achieve that certification in addition to their QMS certification. So they have both product certification and QMS certification to demonstrate to their buyers about their quality credibility. And users and buyers who are completely confused to see so many suppliers armed with so many certificates, yet being supplied with poor quality and seemingly attractive pricing, they need to be getting the confidence that whom they can reach out to in terms of getting a good quality product. Thank you all and happy learning.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that wonderful. If in fact you really opened up the topic with your enlightened thoughts and the reality that what is happening, really you made a wonderful, in fact, a good thought process you have kicked off. I think it will be taken in the right spirit, and the concern that what you have expressed is the concern from the industry, from the global market point of view, which is the topic today. Thank you, Rajivji, thank you for that wonderful keynote address. Now, I welcome Mr. Mahadevan to deliver his speech. Over to Mr. Mahadevan.
Yeah, good evening all. Welcome for this interesting session. And Mr. Rajiv Nath has set the tone right in terms of the key challenges as Indian manufacturers face when they have to look at exporting, and even within the country on in terms of price challenges and all those things. We are industry as a whole and medical devices, if you look at it, is an interesting phase, I would say, which we are in as a country in India, where there is a lot many opportunities which are coming up, and of course all opportunities comes with the key challenges what it's been looked at by the industries in terms of understanding the regulatory framework for medical devices, and in terms of seeing how they can comply to it. So the presentation what I'm going to make today is going to give a brief overview on the various regulatory requirements which are commonly applied for medical devices across the globe, and what is it expected in terms of compliance to those regulations on a brief note on each of the regulations. This is what I'm going to talk about today. So in the interest of the network bandwidth, I will keep my video off and I will share my presentation. So I will keep my video off in the interest of the bandwidth, and I will now share my presentation on the screen. So, everybody are able to see the screen? I hope everybody see the screen. So this is what I'm going to present today: Global Medical Device Regulations Overview. And thanks to Mr. Ram Kumar on introducing me. So I will not further go into the introduction of myself. So I represent DQS India, and just a brief about DQS. DQS is based out in Germany, a leading certification body, which is established in 1985. And DQS was the first certification body for quality assurance system. And DQS has four major stakeholders. DGQ, which is German Society for Quality, and German Institute of Standardization, that is DIN, Underwriters Laboratories, UL, and four other small minor German industry federations. So these are all the stakeholders in DQS. So DQS has the holding company based in Germany, and DQS India is a fully owned subsidiary of DQS. So 1985 and we are in 2020. So 35 years we are into the certification business. 1990, these are all some milestones which DQS had. And with respect to medical, the topic of today, if you look at DQS is there as a notified body for European medical device directive since 1995. So we are one of the oldest notified bodies for medical. These are all the various service portfolios what we offer under certification. So with respect to medical, we offer ISO 13485. We offer assessment on GMP. We offer CE marking and MDSAP audits and certification. So this is the brief about what we offer from DQS. DQS, we have accreditation. Mr. Rajiv Nath was also pointing about credible certification. So credible certification comes with an proper accreditation, which is being recognized by the International Accreditation Forum. So at DQS, we have various accreditation for medical devices program. So under ISO 13485, we offer certification under ANAB accreditation, which is an American accreditation body, DAX, which is a German accreditation body, and SEC, which is the Canadian accreditation body. So DQS, we also have the status of an authorized auditing organization under MDSAP program. MDSAP is Medical Device Single Audit Program. So we also have that authorized auditing organizations approval. And of course, we are a notified body since 1995 for the Medical Device Directive 9342 EEC. And recently, we also got our notified body designation for the Europe Union Medical Device Regulation 2017/745. So just to go with the basics, ISO 13485 is the standard for medical device manufacturer for the regulatory purpose. So ISO 13485, we would say that it is a foundation or the foundation platform in which the medical device manufacturers lay their quality management system, which helps them in integrating the regulatory requirements into their quality system to establish their process and effectively maintain their processes. So the recent version of ISO 13485, that is 2016, so it opens out and it includes not only the medical device manufacturer, but also by suppliers or external parties who provide goods and services for medical device manufacturing organizations. So this opens out from that the manufacturing, from the manufacturing, it opens out even to the distribution network or whoever is getting associated with the manufacturers. So the service providers, like various service providers, which includes regulatory representatives and supply chain, and also the distribution chain. So the distributors, the traders of medical device can also bring in their quality system under ISO 13485. So as stated, this provides a basic framework in terms of implementing the regulatory requirements. So the requirements of ISO 13485, wherever the regulatory requirements need to be integrated, the standard provides a framework to adopt those regulatory requirements within the quality management system and build the processes integrating the regulatory requirements. It gives you to establish a risk-based approach in terms of controlling each and every processes within the company, right from product design, manufacturing, distribution, training. So whatever the process which you take it in the organization, it enables you to take a risk-based approach and provide appropriate controls in ensuring effective maintenance of your quality management system. So once you bring in that effectiveness of the maintaining your quality management system, the benefits are huge. So you can have much more robust process. So that way it brings in more maturity into the organization, confidence in the output, whatever you are giving out. So that gives more credibility to the company into the global market as well. The whole standard is based on Plan, Do, Check, Act. So that is the famous Deming's wheel, which has been the basic principle for most of the quality management system standards. So ISO 13485 also is structured based on this. The next one, which the key regulation, what most of the manufacturers are looking to comply with, is the CE marking. So CE marking is for CE marking is a certification mark that is indicates conformity with health, safety, and protection, environmental protection standards for products sold within the European Economic Area. So to sell any product within Europe, CE marking is a requirement. So any product. So let us narrow it down to the medical devices. So Europe, they have come up with lot many directives or regulations for various product categories. For medical devices, there are directives which is called as Medical Device Directive, of course, which was supposed to get obsoleted by May this year, and due to the global pandemic situation, they have extended the validity of that till next year, May 2021 May. So the new regulation which is replacing the Medical Device Directive is the Europe Union Medical Device Regulations. So in order to place a medical device within the European Union, you need to have CE marking for the product. So in order to obtain CE mark to the product, there are various steps which are involved that I will be covering it in the next slides. So it basically is the manufacturer's responsibility and manufacturer's declaration that the product meets the requirements of the applicable directives or the regulation. So once the manufacturer demonstrates compliance to the relevant directives, the CE marking is possible to be put on the product. So when it comes to CE marking, many of us would have CE with number or CE with a 4-digit number and just a C. So there is a difference between this. If you see CE with a 4-digit number, that means there is a third-party assessment involved. That 4-digit number is the identification of a notified body who is involved in assessing the product compliance towards the regulations and also the quality system of the organization with respect to the implementation of the regulatory requirements. So when notified body is involved, you will see a CE marking with a 4-digit number. What is the difference with a plain CE and a CE with a 4-digit number is depending on the product classification. So there are some low risk products where the regulation allows to have a self-declaration, right? So when we say self-declaration, the ownership is on the manufacturer who is declaring that he is complying to the regulatory requirements. They need to establish the systems in place and come up with the declaration and provide the product with, and can provide the product with CE mark. So as I said, the current regulation for CE marking for medical devices is 2017/745. So this was adopted by the European Parliament on 5th of April, and which was supposed to be completely applicable from 26th of May 2020. And due to the pandemic, that has been postponed by 1 year time. So compliance to the regulatory requirements for Europe, that too with the new requirement on MDR. So this is the basic timeline in which it has been provided. So 2017, the new regulation got published, and 2020, 3 years was the transition time. And now due to the pandemic, there is a revised time. So that transition time got extended by 1 year. And subsequent to that, the new regulation will be applicable. So now how the certification process works, whatever the products which has CE marking till 2021 May, based on the Medical Device Directive 9342 EEC, those products can be sold into Europe till the certificate will be valid till 26th May 2024, and the products can be placed in the market till 26th May 2025. That means by regulation, European Union allows the products which are compliant to Medical Device Directive 9342 EEC to be placed in the market, that is placed within the European Union till 26th of May 2025, right? So what happens for the new products, whatever it is being coming up now? So for the new products, whatever it is being coming up now, the manufacturer need to comply to the new regulation, that is EU MDR 2017/745. So they need to demonstrate compliance, and the process remains the same. So I will come to the process. The process remains the same in terms of assessment and certification. So just a brief comparison about what is the difference between the old regulation and the new regulation. The new regulation is being more open and tightening up in terms of post-market activities. There is a greater stress in terms of post-market surveillance activities of medical devices, where manufacturers have a greater role in terms of post-market monitoring and reporting. And like the US, they are bringing in more transparency in terms of the incidents, what it is being reported, and what is the certificates being granted. So they are in the process of rolling out the EUDAMED database, which will have a lot of sections in where the incidents are getting reported, so that it becomes accessible to other regulatory agencies and also makes publicly available. So these are all the significant things which are coming up. There are certain classification changes which are coming up in terms of the new regulation. And annexures are requirements which says how to meet to the regulations. So there are more number of annexures which has come in the new regulation, so which gives more information in terms of what is to be complied. So in order to get CE marking, what is that need to be done? So first thing, you need to first classify your medical device based on the intended use. And based on the classification, the assessment route, the route in which you follow to take the certification will largely depend on and identify the applicable harmonized standards applicable for the product. So that means you need to be very clear in terms of, if you have to go on for a regulatory certification, you need to start that thought process right from the design concept stage itself, so that you can inbuild those requirements of the standards into the product design and make the product through the requirements, right? So, but that's not the case always which happens. So you have the product and then now you see a demand already that, okay, I need to get a CE mark. So what is that you need to be done? Still the process remains the same. You need to go back and then classify your product, find out what are all the applicable harmonized standards for that. Harmonized standards are standards which are recognized by the European Union in order to demonstrate compliance to the regulatory needs. So when you are complying to the harmonized standards, that is a basic minimum in which it provides a certain level of compliance to the regulatory requirements. So you need to identify and then look at your product, whether your product is meeting to those standards or not, or whether you need to do a design change or whatever needs to be done, you need to do that. And then come up with a document called as a technical file. So technical file is a document which provides the evidence of compliance to the essential requirements of the regulation. So of course, in the old directive MDD, it is called as essential requirements. And in the current MDR, it is called as general safety principles and requirements. So the intent remains the same. There are certain things which as a regulation, they expect you to comply. So you need to demonstrate compliance to those, and then only you will be able to have the certification. So once you have this, then you need to go and identify a notified body who can give you the certification. Of course, notified body, it comes for high risk and high risk type of products. If it is coming under a self-certification, then it is not requirement. Next is a very, very important point. Appoint an authorized representative within the Europe Union. So if manufacturer based in India, you need to have a legal representation within the European Union, and this person or this organization will be the primary contact for the authorities, for the regulators to be in touch with in terms of any issues related to the products. So irrespective of the classification, the European representative is a requirement, irrespective of whether you are placing the product in Europe or not. In order for you to demonstrate compliance to the regulatory requirements, you need to have an authorized representative within European Union. Then assessment by notified body will happen. Assessment by notified body happens in two phases. One is the assessment of the product. That means the technical file will be assessed by the notified body, and also there will be a system assessment at the facility. Once both are completed successfully and all the issues have been resolved, then a certification will be granted and the CE mark can be put on the product. So whoever the notified body giving you the CE certificate, they will have a unique 4-digit number, and your product will have the CE with that 4-digit number. So this is required to identify which notified body has certified the product. In case of any issues, it will also help the authorities to go back to the notified body and check in terms of the assessment outcomes. So that is the basic requirements in terms of CE marking. So nowadays we have been hearing more and more about MDSAP. What is MDSAP? MDSAP is Medical Device Single Audit Program. So this is a collaborative effort which has come from 5 major regulatory regulated countries. One is US, Canada, Australia, Brazil, and Japan. So these 5 regulatory regulated countries, these 5 countries joined there and then came up with a medical device single audit program, where one audit will encompass the coverage of all these regulatory requirements and enables the manufacturer to approach for product approval within these 5 major geographies. So this is what the whole purpose of MDSAP, right? So apart from these 5 countries, there are also new affiliate members who just got added up into the program is Argentina and Korea. Apart from these these things, there are certain official observers. So WHO, they are an official observer for this program, specifically in the area of IVDs. And Europe Union is also an observer, but they are not joined into the program as such. So the whole concept of MDSAP is like this: the regulatory authorities, through the auditing organizations like DQS and other auditing organizations, they collaborate with us in terms of authorizing us to go and do the audit on behalf of these 5 regulators. So on behalf of these 5 regulatory bodies, the auditing organizations go and do the assessment at the manufacturer's facility and provide a certificate. And manufacturers can use that certificate for regulatory submissions in these 5 regulated markets. So that is the whole concept of MDSAP. So what are the significant benefits on going for this is, just imagine a manufacturer having approval, product approval in Japan, product approval in US, product approval in Brazil, product approval in Australia. So each and every regulator will start banging their doors in terms of doing audits or inspections, right? So that's going to take a lot of cost and a lot of effort in terms of the resource utilization within the organizations, right? So this program will minimize the number of assessments where from a regulator, which they'll come and do at the manufacturer. So this program will help them in terms of having one audit for multiple regulations. And this is widely accepted by the regulators, not only with these 5 regulatory bodies, and on the other regulated markets where they are coming up with their regulations, like countries like Saudi Arabia, or countries like Singapore or Malaysia, or even African countries like Kenya or South Africa. Everybody has their own method of protecting their community. So what they do is they have some restrictions of importing the medical devices. So they need to ensure the medical devices, whatever it is coming into their country, is safe and effective. So they adopt multiple methods in ensuring that. So MDSAP and CE marking, these 2 are very widely accepted across the globe, and most of the other approval process across other countries are based on these principles. So that is why in today's discussion, I've taken up these countries, so that opens up the whole window for the manufacturer in terms of product compliance in upgrading their products or systems into other countries as well. So just to give an example how MDSAP has benefited, US FDA, which is perceived as one of the toughest regulation in terms of audit or inspections to be met with. So post rollout of this MDSAP program, the number of inspections done by FDA directly on into the manufacturer's locations have come down. You can see the graph in 2019, it is almost 50%. It has come down drastically. So this is what FDA also wants. They want to minimize their visits to the customers, to the manufacturers, unless otherwise there is a for-cause inspection because of any post-market incidents. Other than that, they generally rely upon on the MDSAP program. So this is how the regulatory authorities will be using the MDSAP audit reports, what it is being issued, report and the certificate being issued by the auditing organizations. So Australia will be using the audit report as part of evidence that help to determine compliance to the medical requirements for Australia. So if you look at these 5 geographies, Canada, it is made it as mandatory to comply with MDSAP. So in order to get any product license in Canada, MDSAP certificate is mandatory. Whereas for the other 4, it is made as voluntary, where they may not demand that, but they would prefer to have it with MDSAP so that it becomes an one level assurance to the regulators. Yes, they have implemented the regulatory requirements to a fair extent. So now next part, what I'm going to discuss now is in terms of how to get product approval for various geographies. There are two things. MDSAP will provide you only the system level compliance to the regulation. So when I say the system level compliance to the regulation, it means adopting the regulatory requirements within the quality management system of the organization. So the base foundation principle is 13485. So based on 13485 requirements and integrating the regulatory requirements, whatever it has been identified by the company, integrate into their quality management system and incorporate within their processes. So that part of it will be assessed in the MDSAP audits. Apart from that, to get product approval in these geographies, there are certain additional activities which are there, which the manufacturer need to do. So like I explained in terms of the CE marking, what it is in product getting the approval process. Similarly for Australia, there are classification, which is more or less similar to the European model. Determine the classification, and then you need to have an Australian sponsor. So like you need to have an authorized representative, you need to have an Australian sponsor over here. The Australian sponsor is the person who is going to facilitate your registration with the authorities. You need to also have a technical file or a design dossier, which they call it. You need to have a declaration of conformity, that is the Australian declaration of conformity. You provide all these details to your sponsor. Sponsor will submit to TGA, that is the Therapeutic Good Administration, that is the act. So that is the regulator. So that will be submitted by your sponsor. So once the application is reviewed and it is approved, there will be a number which will be assigned for you. That is the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods. So each product category, once you apply, you will get that ARTG number. That is a requirement to have your product exported to Australia. So once you get this registration, ARTG, it does not expire as long as no changes in the devices and CE marking wherever it is applicable. So Australia also, they accept CE certificate as one of the route. They have a mutual agreement between the regulators. So if you have a CE certificate, then it is also provides a presumption of conformity to the Australian regulations, because both are into the same requirement base. So that has been accepted by them. So this is what it is a requirement for Australia. The key point to note over here is registration do not expire as long as no changes in the device. So whenever there is a change, there needs to be a process within your system to take care and identify what is the implications to the regulatory compliance and take the further actions in terms of further updating your submissions or notifying to them. There are various requirements depending on the regulations in terms of the changes. Next is Brazilian approval process. Brazilian ANVISA approval process. So that is the regulatory agency. Like Australia, we have the Therapeutic Good Administration. Brazil, it is the ANVISA. So the process more or less goes through the similar structure. Classify the device, appoint a Brazilian registration holder, have your product tested at certified labs. So here the change is Brazil, they have certain labs which are authorized by them. So your product, whatever the applicable standards for your product, you need to get the testing done from those labs. Once you comply that, and then you need to have the compliance to Brazilian good manufacturing practices. So that is more or less your quality management system requirements. So for different classes, different requirements are there in terms of the assessment by them. So when you have an MDSAP, then they will not come for an assessment unless otherwise it is warranted for. So this way also it helps in speeding up your approval process, because when Brazil came into this program, and as of last year, what I know, they had a backlog of backlog applications to do audits for 3 years. So the manufacturers have to wait 3 years to have ANVISA to visit their facility and complete their product approval process. And today's technology changes. 3 years is too long. The technology itself will die down within 3 years. That is what the era which we are in. So this MDSAP has helped the manufacturers in terms of quickening the process in terms of approvals, submission for approvals. Canada. So as I stated earlier, Canada, they have made MDSAP as mandatory. So Canada also, again, the process remains the same. The regulation gives you the rules for classification. There are 4 levels of classification: class 1, class 2, class 3, or class 4. So classify your device, implement your quality management system under MDSAP, and you need to get a medical device license. So for class 1 product, you need to have establishment license, and you need to have your establishment license for other classes also. So you need to have the establishment license, that then you need to have the medical device license. So you need to apply directly with the Health Canada authorities with the relevant forms. So in order to get your things, the first thing what they ask is your MDSAP certificate. So you need to provide that and provide the details in terms of demonstrating compliance to Canadian regulations. So similar to European regulations or Australia or Brazil, Canada also has a set of requirements to demonstrate for the product compliance. So you need to provide those declarations and details along with the application. Once that is reviewed and approved, you will be notified directly, and the license will be issued. The details all will be maintained in their website as well. Japan, again, if you look at the process, goes by this: classify, appoint a market authorization holder. So similar to Australian sponsor, you have a market authorization holder who has the authorization on your behalf. So if you are a manufacturer, you need to have a market authorization holder in Japan, so who will control your device registration. So all your registration of products will be through this market authorization holder, and you need to provide all the details to him, and he will submit and get the approval, and he can import or you can have other importers who can get your products into Japan and sell it into that market. So with respect to the Japanese regulation, the first point of contact and the ownership of compliance lies with market authorization holder. So the market authorization will transfer that responsibilities in terms of compliance on the product level and to the quality management system level to the manufacturers outside of Japan. If the manufacturers are outside of Japan, they will transfer that into those manufacturers. So that's where the Japanese regulation becomes applicable for the manufacturers outside of Japan also, and how they need to, how they will have a relationship with the market authorization holder to export their products into Japan. US FDA, this is most of us are somewhat familiar with. The CDRH, Centers for Device and Radiological Health, is responsible for regulating the firms who manufacture, repackage, relabel, or import medical devices sold into US. So like CDRH, there are other division within FDA which controls for different type of products. Say for example, for drugs, there is a different center, and for IVD, there is a different center. So I'm just touching upon with respect to the devices. Again, if you look at classify, register your establishment with FDA, and get your product approvals. So product approval has, based on the classification, there are different rules which are there within FDA for compliance. So some of the class 1 products. So in FDA, there are only 3 levels of classification: class 1, class 2, and class 3. So class 1 product are all mostly very low risk products where the product approval is exempted. So for class 1 product, you have your establishment registration, and then you are ready and have your device listing done, and you are ready to export to your export to US. For class 2 and class 3 devices, there are different requirements. Class 2, they call it the most commonly known as 510K. 510K is the section number of the regulation. So that is a pre-market notification. So pre-market notification is where it needs to be notified to FDA that this type of products are being sought for importing into the US market. So you provide, depending on the product, there are various product level regulations which are there within the US. So that we need to demonstrate compliance to that and then submit the evidence of compliance to FDA directly, or through there are certain FDA has also certain third party assessing bodies. Through them also you can submit the FDA this 510K dossiers. So upon approval, you will be given a number. So that is for the product approval. That then you need to do the device listing into the FDA site. Then you are ready to export into the US. So again, the fundamental requirement comes over here is you need to have a local agent. So you need to have a US agent, similar to all other regulations what we have seen so far. You need to have a US agent if you don't have an office in the US. So you need to have a US agent. So this is the requirement, and how MDSAP is getting linked. So quality system requirements 21 CFR 820, that is for the quality system requirements for the US FDA. So you need to have that incorporated into your quality management system. So again, MDSAP is the one which is going to, which is helping you to integrate that MDSAP under the MDSAP program. So just to touch upon with respect to the Indian medical device rules. So we have also come up with the regulations, though we have come up a little late, but I think we have come up with good framework in terms of Indian medical device rules. So the Indian medical device rules, again, it has the same methodology. Classify your device. Here also 4 levels of classification. So instead of numbers, we adopt class A, class B, class C, and class D. So you need to again go through, prepare all necessary documents for product registration application and upload the registration into the CDSCO website. So provide that. And for class A and class B, which is equivalent to, say, I would say class 1 and class 2A type of devices, with if you have to equate it with European classification. Manufacturer shall make an application for grant of license to manufacture for sale or for distribution to the state licensing authority through a specified form. For class C and class D, it has to be with the central licensing authority. So the whole regulatory program is being controlled by Central Drug Standards and Control Organization. Within that, there is a medical device division now that is being monitoring. Once you get the license for that, the license is valid for 5 years. And even for complying with Indian medical device rules, there are requirements related to have your quality management system complying to certain requirements. So the rules, Schedule 5 of the rules provides the requirement for the quality management system. And you need to have competent technical staff. So you need to have internally, you need to have a competent technical staff who has the relevant background in terms of regulatory experience and also in terms of educational experience. So this is what a requirement which is being stated into the medical device rules. So on the whole, if you look at the overall framework for the regulatory across the globe, if you look at, it goes by the basic principles of identify what it is, the regulatory requirements, incorporate within your quality management system. Then onto the product side, identify based on the intended use of the product and the applicable regulatory needs, identify which class it comes in. Based on the classification, you prepare and demonstrate compliance towards the applicable regulatory requirements for that product, and then approach the relevant approval authority for getting the approval. So in a nutshell, this is the significant process steps. The other important aspect in terms of continued compliance to the regulatory requirements, or even within the quality management system, if you need to look at, the post-market activities is a significant part in terms of any regulatory requirement. So all these regulatory requirements, whatever we have discussed so far, it includes a significant portion dedicated to a post-market activity. So all the regulations make the manufacturer responsible for the performance of the product once it goes out of the facility till the declared lifetime of the product. So the manufacturers need to have a robust system in terms of the post-market surveillance. So the post-market surveillance includes a lot of things, right from your feedback, complaints handling, and how the product is performing, and whether there are any incidents or any failures of the product which is causing any injury to the patient, death of a patient. So depending on the regulatory framework in which you are working, each of these regulations have listed requirements in terms of further actions based on post-market activities. So you need to have systems in place to address those things, be it recall of product, or be it field correction, or be it notification or advisory notice. So there are various things which are involved based on the nature of the complaint and the impact what it creates to the users and to the patient on a larger scale. So that is what the whole requirements in terms of the significant global regulatory requirements in a nutshell, which I tried to address. Next is just a very brief overview in terms of the overall certification process. Be it any program, the overall certification process goes like this: initial information collection, where the certification body will obtain the information from the manufacturers in order to determine what are all the activities being performed by them, in order to have the right scoping, and in order to identify the relevant competent people required in terms of doing the assessment, and also to check whether the certification body has the required competent person to do that activity. So that is the initial information. Once that review is done, a commercial offer is made and a contractual arrangement between the certification body and the manufacturer takes place. Subsequent to that, stage 1 audit, which is a readiness audit to review the overall preparation, in the sense overall intent wise, whether the documentation, whatever it is being prepared and all those things, it's all meeting the intent of the ISO 13485 standard and also to the regulatory requirements. So once these things are done, stage 2 audit, which is called as a certification audit. So that is being performed. So once that is done, the whatever the issues which have been identified and reported, all those things closed, and a review happens within the certification body to take a decision to grant a certificate. Once the certificate is granted, then there has to be a maintenance of certificate. So the surveillance audits happens, and after 3 years time, a recertification audit happens. So this is the overall certification process. So what Rajiv Nath was mentioning about the credible certification is, you need to look at for the credible certification body who can provide you the appropriate assessment in order to ensure that your processes are getting improved and matured. So how you can identify whether the certification body is reputed or accredited? So you need to look at for an internationally accredited certification body. So nationally or internationally. So NABCB, the National Accreditation Certification Body for India. So similarly, there are various accreditation bodies which are there across the globe. So these accreditation bodies are joined together and then they formed as an international accreditation forum. So members of international accreditation forum, who are the accreditation bodies who are all members of international accreditation forum, are where the certification bodies are accredited to those accredited bodies are reliable. So that is how you can identify a reliable certification body. So these are all some of the useful links where you can find information about various regulations, what we discussed about. So that's it from my side, and thanks all for your patient attention. So thank you. Thanks for the opportunity as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that wonderful presentation about the various regulations across countries globally, and it has really given a very, in a nutshell, you have explained about what are all the various regulations that is required for medical devices. Uh, Hope it was very useful for all our audience too. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir. Now I
Thanks.
call upon Mr. Satyendra to deliver his address.
Thank you, sir. Let me start sharing my screen and so you can see that, I guess.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it is visible. Yeah, it is visible.
Let me just go to full screen. Okay, friends, very good evening to all. And this short presentation, basically, I think Mahadevan has made my job easy. After hearing a lot of jargon about certification, some of you I know are definitely a little confused. So that is where we come in. Now I will, in very simple way, let you know what are the basic processes and where the industry needs hand-holding and how to select them. So that's what it is. Role of us as consultants to all the stakeholders. It's not only the manufacturers. Guidance sometimes is required to the contractors who place orders, to the end users. And in 39 years, I have been like, I was introduced, I was with Bureau of Indian Standards, set up 2 international certification bodies, and I'm an assessor for medical devices for NABCB. So most of the certification bodies I have assessed also. And then we come into contact with a lot of issues. So some of that is what I'm going to share with it. I start with the last slide of Mahadevan with a little more details. Now, many of you are manufacturers. How do you get the certification? The process was explained little technically there. I'm going into a very simple mode. So obviously you will select the certification body. And the first and foremost thing which is done is testing. You have got to test your product. See, what he has told is on the management systems. 13485 is the supplement to product certification. First of all, the user, the buyer, whether it's exported to any country, they need to make sure that the product meets the particular product standard. Once that is confirmed, then the second step would be going into the systems like 13485, 9000 of food safety, everything basically it says or it gives an assurance to the user, the buyer, that yes, it is not a one-time product testing this guy has done, but he also has a robust system to maintain that credibility. So we'll come to that later. First thing is the testing. Obviously, the testing has to be done. Where do you do the testing? Is it possible to be done in your lab? Have you to take it out to another laboratory, an accredited lab? Normally, when we talk anything in this forum, we talk about accredited system, like Rajiv ji told, credible certification bodies. Similarly, the credibility in testing comes from a lab which is accredited to 17025. That is NABL in India. So we need to do the testing, or we can also have the certification body witnessing the testing at your end if he or she in the certification body has been qualified by their peers as a competent person to witness the test. So both options are available. That is one thing you see. Second one is the engineering evaluation. What is this? This is basically ascertaining the critical components in the product. See, the CE marking or any overseas certification today, the focus is on exports. So most of the certification outside India, whether it's a UL mark or a German mark, VDE, or SEMCO, NEMCO, DEMCO, there are n number of them, as you would see later on. The whole philosophy there is that certain components are critical. And what are these critical components? These are those which affect the safety of the product. A simple example is a fuse, for example, used in a medical device. If the fuse is wrong, some fault current because of some surge in the supply or whatever it is could damage the equipment, make the device live. Normally, when you are undergoing, God forbid, an ECG process, you would not like that probe to give a shock and you end up in a different bed altogether. So this is very important. So we have to identify which are those critical components and what kind of a compliance they require. In CE, normally it requires compliance to the relevant European standards. So altogether, the test report, the critical component evaluation report are documented. This is a part of the technical file which Mahadevan spoke about. It gives the details of the product, what are the critical components used, and in CE we go further step ahead as we explained. It also has the compliance mechanism. How do you comply to the product and all that. Just hold on 1 second, somebody is at the door. Well, these are the casualties of doing it from home. Nobody is there, so I have to open the door. Sorry. So documentation is done detailing all that, the test reports, the photographs of the product, list of critical components, and then how do you ensure the compliance? And then there are little other things to be done. The product family details. Normally, you would be having a family of products. You don't go for one single product to be certified unless you make that particular unique device. So how do you categorize the family? How do you select the most critical among that? So these are all areas where you need to have some hand-holding. Once that is done, of course, a statement of compliance is issued by the CB, and then you go for certification, field audits and all that. Even there, you will need some idea what the audits would comprise of. What are the areas they are going to look at when they come for a field audit to your factory? Again, it differs from overseas to Indian certification. I'll also touch upon a little bit on the BIS side because we also need national certification for many of the medical devices. The difference basically here is there is no engineering evaluation of critical components and all that in the BIS, though we do mention in the report, it goes by repetitive testing. So when it comes to testing and you want a BIS mark, let's say you are making a PPE today or a ventilator or a device, there are certain equipments you will have to procure and place in your laboratory, have a person to test them, qualified person who knows what is to be tested, how it is to be tested, and what test records are to be kept. So the audit of BIS would comprise of looking at the test reports or records, what you did from the date of previous inspection to the current date, how many quantities have you produced, whom have you sold it, and all that. It doesn't go more into the quality system. Whereas the Senelec or the European assessment, we don't go into these details. We look at the quality system from the beginning to the end. So there are subtle differences. So that is in a nutshell what we do about it and why we are going about. Few marks I have shown here. See, every country today has regulations. Like we have the medical device regulations, what our friend showed. All the countries have some regulations and some marks which they require for showing conformity to the authorities, to the users everywhere. So you need to identify them. If I am going to sell a thermometer in India, do I need an ISI mark? You should know that. Sometimes it's difficult for the manufacturers to locate, 100 odd websites, find out what is required, what is not required. So that's where again, a good consultant comes and helps. So the first and foremost thing, as you have seen from the presentation, is identify the appropriate standard depending on the country. Fortunately, the world is shrinking. Today, the basic standards all over the world have boiled down to either ISO standards or IEC standards, and European norm or EN standards are nothing but derivatives of either ISO or IEC with not much of a change. Indian standards, of course, many of them are today adopted, but not all of them. So we have variants there also. So you need to identify which is the most correct standard for the product. Additional regulations, audit regulations, like you are selling it to US markets. You need a mark, either ULCSA, ETL or anything. If it's a regulated product, one of the NRTL marks, then you know that you have to be audited 4 times a year. See, why I am telling all this should be known is this all adds to the cost. I don't know if some of you attended my CE training, basic training. I told there also that one has to calculate all of them. Many come to us saying that, okay, I have this particular order of 50 pieces. Now, when we talk about certification to these markets, especially the US, whether it is 500 pieces or 50 pieces, the testing, the compliance, and the certification could go to 6,000 to 10,000 US. So having spent $10,000, is it worthwhile selling those 50 pieces just because somebody wants it? So these are the things you need to ascertain. And that is where you need additional knowledge. What are the regulations? Do they need 1 inspection in a year? Do they need 4 inspections in a year? Do they need to supply samples there? Some of the certifications require periodic samples to be sent to the country. Classic example is cable for British BASEC mark. Every 3 months you need to send a sample to UK. They don't believe in our labs. And then the testing charges altogether goes to 10,000 pounds. Nice to have that mark, but do you have that market? So that is another thing. Additional, all the regulations should be understood. Critical components, as I told you, there are certain thumb rules, as I told, something, if that component fails, it can cause an hazard. That's the rule, like, fuse, a MOV, a capacitor, a solenoid valve, even the plastic enclosure. I don't want it to catch fire if something goes wrong. So we identify those critical components and look at their own compliance. Like I'm using a cable inside for a wiring, that, see, the standard simply says that they should meet their own standard, establish conformity of that component to its own standard, which means cable has to meet, let us say, 60227. So how do I know it meets? I buy a certified cable. Otherwise, the CB would say that, look here, if you're not buying a certified cable, you're happy with the neighbor's cable or something, I'm okay with it so long as you get it tested. So you are going to add to your testing cost by testing somebody else's component at your cost, just because you need certification to that. I'll just call you later. Then what happens is, this is again a cost exercise which would cost. So we need to identify, are there sources or substitutes? Maybe 2 rupees more, I can buy a certified fuse, for example. The third, fourth thing is labs. Locating labs. Where can I test it? We have done a lot of training for PPs, and we had to really put everything together, put on our website that, look here, these are the labs. Otherwise, again, looking and searching from an NABL website also, sometimes it is difficult. Sometimes you may not have the testing facilities in India. Then you will have to look at where can I test it, which is, economically worthwhile. This is again an information you would need. Training of the quality assurance personnel, quality control, quality assurance. The laboratory person has to be trained, especially as I told, BIS requires that you have to do repetitive testing. So you won't get all the time trained personnel, and sometimes most of the industry being MSME, small scale, they say, sir, I get a BE graduate, after a month he'll run away. So can you train this diploma guy? So normally we take I always suggest that, you have at least 2 of them trained. So both of them wouldn't leave the company and run away. At least one would remain. So that is also required. So that's where I told, handholding with a good consultant eases this process. Because we have been in this field, and many of us have worked with regulators, with certification bodies. So it's easy for us to locate, find out answers to your queries. Know how to find the compliance, as I already told, testing requirements. The third one, unlike Indian standards, most of the international standards state the requirements, because we have the concept of product specific, product family standards there. Like 60601, which is a standard for medical devices, electromedical devices. There are some specific parts, but it is quite possible that what you are making is not having a specific product standard. But outside, you can certify to the general standard also. But you have to choose the applicable tests. So that is basically another reason. And this is my experience. See, certification in India, I mean, I'm not only talking about the overseas like the CE or the UL or any other mark, even the BIS mark is always been reactive. In my entire 39 years of maybe 1,000 product certification, which I have myself done or seen, 90% came after either a regulation came or a law came, or the customer suddenly woke up and told, by God, I'm not going to buy this unless you have this mark. And it's not that India only it happens, overseas also. CE may be in force for last 20 odd years, but there are still some customers there who do not know, and it just, escapes through the customs and all that. And suddenly somebody tells them and they realize and they say, no, next consignment onwards, you have to give it. And then they come to us. And as a CB, I have seen many times the stories that, sir, I've been selling this for last 20 years. Nobody died out of this product. Now you are asking me to change this component. You are asking me to change the plastic. I use the same plastic for 20 years. All those things come. That is where, and why a consultant is required is, it is conflict of interest. Let's understand very carefully, a certification body is not supposed to do any consultancy. They are only supposed to evaluate the product. Yes, they could tell them that, look here, this requirement is not being met, but how to meet the requirement, they cannot do it. I know some are doing it, but it's not the right way. So that is again there. And why did I put this? Oh, many times the CB today, what happens now? You are here, next time you are in another CB, and CBs also have a lot of attrition. Now they have to run their show. Many times they have these junior young engineers who have come and they may not know. So if you as a consultant or as a manufacturer have the knowledge and you are empowered with the knowledge, you can show them where they go wrong. So sometimes it can be a costly exercise if they tell something and you agree, and later on it is realized that this test or this protocol was not necessary at all. My advice, if some CBs are there, of course DQS is there, to the others also, if they are there, do conduct training, because this is the domain I can understand, because I have worked with three of the largest CBs in the world, Intertek, CSA and UL, and also the National Certification Body of India. So we understand the requirements, and I'm still learning after 39 years. Let me be very frank. Periodic training of the directive, call the consultants, manufacturers, do something like today our friend has educated on a new domain, MDSAP. We have had programs on medical device directives, regulations, PPEs, and a lot of other stuff, but we didn't know about MDSAP. Today he has educated us on the whole new area. So something similar should be done periodically, and we at CCC are fully supportive of that. We welcome anyone who wants to do that. So our people are also educated, and those who already understand something, our knowledge gets even better so that we can help the manufacturers. And this I have put deliberately because there are a lot of CBs. As Rajiv told, you know, anybody, you and I can start a certification body tomorrow because it's not regulated. And then we have something in NAB CB also. When we audited, we have found there were some CBs who applied where husband is the certification body, wife is the consultant. So that is why I wrote Jugaad, because again, let's be frank, many of these CBs have targets on each of their employees' heads. I'm sure Mahadevan agrees with me, because I've seen this. And then what happens? I need my promotion, I need my increment, so I will tell somebody, yaar, kuch kar do, let us certify this fellow, and I have one more number to add. But this is going to cause a dangerous consequence in the uh, end of the day, because medical devices, something like Rajiv told, even a tongue depressor can cause harm if it is not manufactured properly. Remember that that device may come back to us one day, God forbid, and we could be the receiving end for that. So let's not do that. Slow and steady wins the race. We have learned from history. Let's do it properly. Let's give a safe product. Let's give a product which complies to the requirements, complies to its intended use. That is very important. Don't give exaggerated deadlines. Even see, we did the PPE programs. Medical and surgical aprons do need 13485. And many of them were talking to most of us about certain consultancy, this and that. In between, I know some CBs have gotten, and in a month, I know at least 2 or 3. I won't name either the CB or the manufacturers. Maybe they are still here in this group, but they did get 13485, which after all these years of experience, I still wonder how they did it. Don't do such things. So that's it. Combination of a good consultant and a CB can definitely create a good product, enhance the reputation. Today we are all, yesterday also I was in a meeting with our power and skill development minister, Mr. R.K. Singh, and he also emphasized that time has come to stop many of the imports, especially from certain countries. Of course, he didn't name them, and said that we need to roll out a plan, fast track plan, to develop that skills in India, and the government is going all out to do that. So let us do that together and achieve what our Honorable Prime Minister wants, what our entire country wants, what our economy wants. Thank you.
Thank you, Satyendra sir. for that wonderful presentation, and you have really highlighted the role of the consultant and also how a responsible manner the consultant has to conduct himself in particularly with respect to this medical device certification, and the experience that what you have gained is getting is very well reflected in your presentation. Thanks for all that very good stuff, sir. Thank you, sir. And now over to the question and answer session. We have some questions raised by our participants, which I want to raise it now so that Mr. Mahadevan can answer those questions. And the first question is, what is WHO GMP? Is this audit and certification accredited by WHO?
I think Mahadevan would answer that. So
Yeah. See, GMP is good manufacturing practices, and that is the protocol. It was originated from WHO and then got adopted by many countries in terms of taking that as a base, and then every country has that GMP as a requirement. So in my presentation also, if you look at, I touched upon Brazilian GMP. So for India also, if you look at, we had that as a GMP, where specifically when you look at from a drug manufacturing parlance, yes, that was the term which is being still used. So that is the one good manufacturing practices. So there are some certification bodies who have some accreditation to provide certificates for GMP with an accreditation logo. Of course, at DQS, we currently provide only a gap assessment for GMP.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, Indian government CDSC or DCGI has changed a lot of rules for medical consumables and organ transplant preservation solutions, asking everyone to re-register, causing huge disruptions in life-saving surgeries. So, what are the overall standard protocols in CDSCO?
So I think the consultant group will be the best persons to answer this because we being a certification body and also has a potential to get registered with CDSCO, I would refrain from answering to this and then leave it to the consultants in the forum to respond to this.
see, what I could add here is that there have been a lot of changes thanks to the importance given to the medical devices. There are certain just re-registrations, and even all the devices, they want to bring it under the device, medical device umbrella by 2022. So a lot of things are there in the medical device regulations 2017. Maybe those who are interested can write to us, and these specific queries can be addressed, or we can also have a session with somebody from CDSCO because the specific difficulties, unless mentioned to them, it's difficult for us to give a vague answer to that.
Thank you, sir. Next question: can the medical device
your voice got broken in between. Can you repeat the question, sir?
The question is, can the medical device testing lab apply for ISO 13485?
Well, that's a very interesting question.
Okay.
That's a very interesting question. Medical lab, any testing lab will come under the purview of 17025. So that is the requirement for any test lab, be whatever the product. So the test lab comes under 17025 requirement, and that is the standard which is applicable. That is a quality system standard for test lab, which demonstrates, of course, Satyendra is a punter in that. So,
not really.
is
you
that is the
answered
standard.
it rightly. There is nothing to add except that there's one more standard, 15189. If somebody in the group is of the diagnostic laboratories, so there is a very specific standard 15189 for the diagnostic labs. But medical device testing, as our friend told, it comes under 17025.
Thank you, sir. Next question is, why doesn't CDCSO automatically accept CE or FDA approved products?
So there is a requirement. If they don't accept ours, we don't accept theirs. As simple as that. So we have been telling not only from this forum, from the various other forums when I was with Bureau of Indian Standards also, even today, even if you have a MDSAP, you have IEC CB, BIS nothing doing, you come here, test it in an Indian lab. When ISI mark is approved and accepted in US, fine, we will accept this. So that is as simple as that.
Thank you, sir. Can the testing laboratory apply through MDSAP program?
Yeah, I think it's the same answer in terms
Yeah.
of the 13485. If 13485 cannot be applied, MDSAP cannot be applied.
So till which date can a manufacturer apply for CE under 93/42/EEC, and after that, is there a time limit to get it? Meaning, if you apply by Jan 2021, can the process start and say it takes up to July 2021? Is that okay?
No. Any notified body must, if at all they have to issue a certificate under 9342 EEC, they need to issue the certificate before 25th of May 2021. Beyond that date, MDD loses its legal standing and no certification under that regulation can be issued by any notified body. So to the question what you have put in, different notified bodies has different deadlines in terms of accepting the application. So at DQS, we have a deadline of 30th of September. That is just next mid of next week as the deadline to accept any application under MDD. Beyond that, we will not accept any application under MDD. The certification process, it takes some time for any notified body to assess the file and complete the audit, complete the review and issue the certificate. So different notified bodies has different timelines. So I can tell only from DQS perspective, 30th September is the cutoff date for accepting any application for it.
Thank you, sir. Next question: is it necessary to be a medical professional for becoming an auditor for ISO 13485?
Not necessarily a medical professional. You need to have an appropriate educational background and minimum of 4 years of experience, out of which 2 years need to be within the medical device. So 4 years of experience in medical device manufacturing, design, testing, or regulatory assessments, or quality control, or any of these areas. Out of these 4 years, minimum 2 years need to have a direct experience in a specific medical devices for design or manufacturing process or quality control testing or regulatory approval. So the candidate need to have this experience, then only can be considered for any qualification on auditor. And of course, lead auditor course is mandatory. You need to have that lead auditor course done.
Thank you, sir. Last question is, how to identify GMDN code? Is there any document available for this?
Well, I think I leave it to the consultants. I think this is one of the area where the consultants also will support the manufacturers. So I leave that to the consultant group present in this to answer that. Maybe Satyendra ji can.
Once they send us a specific mail, we can address that.
Yeah.
Not an issue. Yeah. What are the products and how to identify, we can share with them.
Thank you, sir. I think all the questions we have addressed. Now I request. Yeah.
There are some more questions which has come now.
Yeah. Okay.
One of the question is, it says, could you please throw some light on the BIS foreign manufacturer certification scheme for unlisted product in the mandatory certification list? Any advantage of getting this at this point in time?
See, if you want to have an unlisted product, mandatory, yes, you have to have, but there is no hard and fast rule that, you have to have a listed product only. The scheme in very simple words is that audit is done in that country. Suppose you are importing a particular medical device or any device from any country, let's say Germany. The BIS would audit the factory in Germany and draw a sample for testing in India, no matter what certification that product would be already having. Once it passes the tests in Indian NABL accredited labs, he gets the license to use the ISI mark. So the company overseas could put an ISI mark on the product and export it to India. Like we see Even the drinking water in some star hotels come from France. They charge 400 rupees a bottle, but it has a ISI mark. That water has been tested in India, but the license is granted in that country. It applies to all products. It's not necessary that it should be under mandatory certification. When it is under mandatory, you have no choice, but otherwise it's voluntary.
Thank you, sir. Another last question is, if we get any device in bulk, like kits or syringes, and separately packed with separate label in India, do we need manufacturing license, and what are the regulatory requirements? We will answer only the first question. Do we need a manufacturing license?
Your manufacturing license, CDSCO has to tell, I think they would need, but this would come under 13485, which Mahadevan would support me. Moment you change and put your own label, you are considered as a manufacturer under 13485. If you retain the label and say sold and serviced by so-and-so, it's okay. But otherwise, you are considered as a manufacturer under 13485. And MDR 2017, I think Schedule 5 requires that you will have to be registered. That is my offhand knowledge.
Correct, sir. Absolutely, agree. Thank you so much. I think, okay, sir. Can we invite?
Yeah, I'll now call upon Mr. Nambi, our CCC member, one of the GC council member, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ramkumar, sir. Good evening, everybody. This is Nambi. Thank you, Mr. Rajiv Nath, sir, Mr. Mahadevan, and Mr. Satyendra, for giving wonderful insights on the importance of certification, export readiness, and global medical device regulations, and of course, consulting guidance to industry to implement global regulations. Thank you, everybody, and for our wonderful participation also. Thank you very much. Over to Srikanth sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, all of you. I think we will call it a day. I once again thank the speakers today and our CCC members who have been very instrumental in making this program a grand success. And I would like to thank the participants for their lively participation, and it was very helpful to the industry. I could understand from the questions. So we will have more such programs in the coming days. Our purpose, as we told in the beginning, is to educate the industry. So thank you so much, all of you. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.